Hi everyone, my name is Walter Rowe, and I'm here to demonstrate Capture One 22 new pano stitching and HDR merge features. In this picture, we have a panorama which was comprised of 2 rows of images, actually 17 images that were stitched together. If I go back to the browser, you can see if I select all the NEF files, these are Nikon Z7 raw files. They're lossless, compressed raw files. You can see that I took the first row of images, that's actually the water line itself, and then I took the second row of images, which captures the sky. There's overlap between the first row and the second row with the trees, and there's overlap within each row so that the pano stitch is able to both vertically and horizontally stitch together all these images. All I've done is just select the whole batch of images, and this is going to take a while. I'm going to give you a warning in advance, and I may talk through this while it goes, and I may show you the resulting image that I did earlier. But here we're going to right click and we're going to say Stitch to Panorama, and it's going to bring up a dialog that's going to offer us a preview. In the Pano Stitch dialog, there are multiple choices, and you can see from the little icon adjacent to each choice what source images would work best with each algorithm. Spherical images, you can tell it has multiple rows of images. The cylindrical, you can tell it's just a single row of images. Perspective would be where you actually have a converging point in the center. You can see how it's larger on the sides and smaller in the middle. So if you're doing architecture, or perhaps you're looking down a long street in a city, where you have anything where you have converging lines in the middle. And then panini is where you might have converging lines, but you also may have a featured subject in the middle. So we're going to wait. Okay, so here we now have our preview. Now notice I've currently got selected cylindrical. It remembers the last item that you had selected when you did a panorama stitch previously. So the last time I did a panorama stitch, I had used cylindrical, so that's what it already had selected when I brought this up. I'm going to switch to spherical, and we're going to see that it's going to regenerate the preview for spherical. This is when you have multiple rows of images that you're stitching together. One thing to note, which was quite clever on the part of the developers for Capture One 22, is that if you do switch from one projection to another, it caches the result of the selections, the projections that you've already have previously selected. So if I go to cylindrical, it's remembering the cache from when I had selected it before. When I go back to spherical, it remembers the cached image, so it doesn't have to regenerate that all over again. Now if I choose perspective, since I haven't chosen that before for this sequence of images, it will have to generate that preview. So we'll have to sit through it. Okay, so here we have a cylindrical view and we have spherical view. Now, spherical actually does look better, in my opinion, relative to what I actually saw. This actually stretches it. Cylindrical actually stretches it a bit too tall. Spherical, the tree line actually isn't super tall in reality. You can see there's a black block in the bottom left corner and the bottom right corner. I did tell you that this was 17 images. It's an odd number. So I probably took 8 images across the top, or 9 images across the top and 8 images across the bottom, and that probably explains it. why it doesn't really fill in all the way to the ends. But what I actually find impressive is it figured that out. It didn't matter that I had a different number of images across the bottom row than the top row. It managed to figure out how they all stitched together and which ones belonged on the top versus the bottom. Now, it would be nice if we could zoom in right here in the preview and really see how well this was done. Unfortunately, we can't do that. We also can't choose to go in and deselect pictures from here. For example, if I wanted to get rid of one picture because I just felt like I didn't need these on the end, there's no way to deselect that. One other item of note in the stitch is you can choose between 100, 75, 50, and 25%. So I don't necessarily need to have a 200 megapixel output from this, so I could choose a smaller dimension. I'm going to choose the 200 megapixel, the 100% in this case. Notice it's 27,980 pixels wide by 7,482 pixels tall. I'm choosing that just because I want to be able to zoom in to a full zoom for you so that you can see the result of this stitch and how clear it is. So now we're going to watch it. It's going to go through. This will not take 30 seconds. This will take considerably longer. This could take minutes. I'm running on a 2017 iMac with 32 gigs of memory. I think it's a Radeon graphics card. I do have acceleration enabled. This will take some time to generate this. I have done this previously, and I'll just show you this. This image right here is from a previous run of this stitch. And while this is actually stitching, you can see it's actually nicely showing us the progress as it goes across. But I'm going to go ahead and zoom into 100% for this image. And you can see these were all, I think these were handheld. I can't remember for certain if I had a tripod. But this was definitely not a super scientific, carefully laid out sequence of images. I literally just went to this lake and decided I was going to capture this set of images, and I did. You can see that it's very, very clean. Now, there might be a little artifact across here that might represent maybe a little sign of the horizontal, or I'm sorry, the vertical stitching between the two rows, which I had not actually noticed before. But I mean, quite frankly, the detail is amazing. This is a 47 megapixel camera. I can zoom right across here. There's really just no artifacts, even in the water reflections. There are just no artifacts of the stitching together of the images as I pan across here. It's just remarkable. It's beautiful. It's stitched together well. I mean, it's a very detailed image, and in my opinion, a very detailed image might offer lots of opportunity for smudging as an artifact to show when where the images had been stitched together. The one thing that I will say here is you notice that there's a fisherman here who's got his back to me. I maintained the focus on the far side of the lake because the trees were really the focal point, but I thought having the fisherman in the picture was just a nice kind of gave it a sense of scale and place and all that. And right here, you can see right here in the fishing rod that maybe it's missing a little bit of the fishing rod. I don't know if he moved the fishing rod and so it had a hard time finding something there. It's entirely possible. He was not perfectly stationary. But quite frankly, since it's out of focus and we're looking at 100%, if I zoom back to 50%, it's not hardly noticeable. If I zoom out to, fill the screen view, you really can't tell it at all. It's kind of just hidden in the trees over there, so you really can't tell. If I were to even print this pretty large, you'd probably have to look for that to even notice it. You probably wouldn't even pay attention to it because you'd really be looking at the trees. So, as I said, there was maybe this little artifact here, this line here, that might be where the two rows maybe stitched together a little bit. I'm not sure. That could have actually been some artifact in the cloud itself, but it's certainly not visible anywhere else. Now let's go back to the browser. Now here's the resulting image that we just produced. So you can see that it's not cropped. It's got the little jag, you know, the edges. So we'll have to go in and crop. I'll set an unconstrained crop so I can get the you know, crop it to what I want. I'll pull this in past here to eliminate the side little black blocks in the corners. I'll pull up from the bottom just to chop off the pieces there. I have given Capture One feedback that it would be nice to have an auto crop mechanism where maybe it could actually detect where it needs to crop. So here now would be effectively the image. And if I go and look at this version of the image, let me go back and look at this cloud again. If I go back and look at this version of the image that we just produced, that horizontal line that was in the other version is no longer present. And I will tell you that I was a beta tester, and it's conceivable that I generated that other version with the last beta release and not the final production release. So actually I think this is even now improved. I'm gonna go back here just for speed's sake. I'm gonna copy the adjustments from the old one and paste them on the new one, just so that we get the kind of like for like. And it actually looks like, you notice if I go to where it says Pano Multi, I think I used the cylindrical projection for that one, and this one is the spherical projection, which is the multi-row projection. And I think it actually did the right thing. I think that might have been the difference in why we don't have that artifact in the clouds. I think that probably made a difference. So I've learned something new here. Let's take a look at the fisherman. Let's come back over here, 100%. No, we still have this kind of little missing piece of the fishing pole. It's still there. But I think I think this demonstrates well enough how amazing this stitch is. Like I said, it was an odd number of images. It was not an even number of images. It wasn't like 9 over 9. It was 9 over 8. And it found, you know, which row had more versus view, and it pieced them together perfectly. So I'm really very impressed with the result that they have done with this pano stitching. Just super impressed. And of course you can see how beautiful the image is. Now I also did just a single row, and for this I used some really old pictures I had. These images are from 2006. You can see 2006 in the file name. These are really old pictures of a building that I actually used to work in many years ago. And you can see that's just, you know, horizontal pictures, a sequence of landscape oriented pictures. And then this was the resulting frame that came out of that. So here I will highlight those. I will pano stitch them together. These are pretty old and small. I'm going to select cylindrical since it's a single row of images and not a multiple rows of images. And here it stitches them together. There's some artifacts in here. There's some spots and stuff, but what I'm going to show you with this that impressed me absolutely the most out of this is how well this roof line actually came together. So here we go. Okay, so here's let me go and copy my dust spots layer. I want to copy that over here just for, let me just copy all the adjustments over here, just so we go quickly in there. Okay, so all this is just dust spots. I'll turn on the Q just so you can see where they are. I turned on the heel just so you can see the little arrow keys. I'll hit the M so you can see all the red dots. You can see where they are. I do this because I want you to see that there's none on the building itself. So now I'm gonna turn all that back off, and we're gonna go into 100% view, and I'm gonna slowly pan across this image, and I want you to see all these really all these lines in the building, all the roof lines from the tin roof. They're absolutely perfectly aligned. The overlap of the images is absolutely flawless. Every single detail comes out in this picture. This is absolutely unparalleled. I have done the same stitch in Lightroom, and Lightroom always, for some reason, has a smudge right around here where it joins the pictures together, and it follows all the way down through the roof line. So in my opinion, this is my own personal opinion. I see another dust spot here. I forgot. Let me hit that. In my opinion, this is absolutely better quality than Lightroom when it comes to pano stitching. I've done a few in Lightroom, and I just think this beats the pants off of what Lightroom does for pano stitching. And I just couldn't be happier, especially with these images that are from 2006. I mean, these are old, like they may be, I think it's maybe a 6 megapixel image. So stitching them together to get this kind of detail was wonderful opportunity. I'm glad I took them this way long ago as a potential future stitch. I can't say enough good things about this. So you've got a multi-row that we've done, and we've got a single row that we've done. So these are pano stitching. So that's how easy it is to do the pano stitching in the new Capture One 22. Highly recommended, can't be beat. Now let's look at the high dynamic range merge. And oops, let me go here. Okay, so this was a sequence of images. Let me just find one that's kind of closer to like normal. You can see that the scene here, we're at a lakefront. This is a commercial building. I think the bottom has maybe a spa or something, and the top actually has a Whole Foods in it. And then what you can't see off to the right is some restaurants and things, and it's just a pretty setting in a planned community. So what I did was I merged this together using just 5 of the frames. I selected every other image in the sequence. So I just selected, you can see 5 of 14 selected. So I just did that when I did this merge. And what I found was selecting let me go back here. If I select all 9 of the bracketed sequence, it did not improve the quality. It did not improve the quality in any way, shape, or form. In fact, the recommendation from Capture One directly is that you really only need 3 images, and you should have a metered exposure and a -2 stops exposure and a +2 stops exposure. And the rationale that I'm being told is the sensors today, modern sensors, have such an enormous dynamic range that's really all you need in order to get effectively an extra 2 stops of information on either side. So you've increased your dynamic range by 4 by doing a +2 and a -2 from your metered exposure. Now, of course, you need to do your own exposure compensation based on what the scene is itself. So don't just take a metered exposure at 0 compensation. Make sure you set the exposure comp for what you think is true to the scene. We always have to learn how to use the meters in our cameras. So here we'll just select these 5 frames. I am using 5 instead of 3, but that's my choice. That's what I'm choosing to do. In fact, you know what? Here, let's try this. Let's get rid of the center ones. Let's go for the extremes. So we've got a minus. I don't even know what the difference is between these, honestly. Let me look at the information and see what it says. Let's look at these and we'll find out. So we've got 1/100th of a second. We got 1/400th of a second. So that is 2 stops. And we got 1/15th of a second. So you got 1/50th, 1/125th. So this might be a little more than 2 stops difference on this one. So let's go and select that one instead. 1/125th. Okay, so we've got a 1/100th, we got 1/125th, and 1/400th. So we got some metered exposure, some -2 and +2. And let's see what we get. I'm going to right click, and here we're going to say merge to HDR. We're going to get a different pop-up for this one. Here we're going to get auto adjust and auto align. You can turn off auto adjust and it'll make no adjustments whatsoever. But I think you do want to use auto align. This, especially if you're hand holding images where you might have a little shake. I have a Nikon Z7, and the Z7 has the ability to take a bracketed sequence automatically. So I set it up on the tripod and just told the camera to take them. So I know that they're aligned quite well. But I'm letting it do auto align anyway. And I'm going to let it do auto adjust also. So we'll start this process. This doesn't take too long because it's only 3 images. The more images you include, the more you will see. Of course, the longer it takes because it has to merge them together. But this shouldn't take too terribly long since this is only 3 images. Here we go. HDR. So there's our final product, and it's been auto adjusted. So what do we have? We actually have nice clean. We have no blowouts. Let me do exposure warning. So a tiny bit of exposure problems here, and if I mouse over it, actually let me go to 100%. Yeah, let me mouse over. You can see they're actually not quite 255, 255, 255. And the reason they're showing exposure warning is if I go to my preferences and say exposure, I'm actually telling it to warn me at 253. Let me put this all the way to 0 and 255, and you'll see they're almost gone. They're practically gone. Because there is a 254, there might even be a 255 in there somewhere. So, that just tells you this, this did a really remarkable job. And that's all well and good. Let me go back and close those. I think this looks pretty good. White balance might need to be adjusted. I might want to pull in a little bit of... let me turn off exposure warning, so I'll get rid of the red. But you can see that even the shadows, actually there's you can see under here, it's pretty dark, but not totally dark. Go back over to here, and if I want to pump that up a little bit, I could. I'll put it to 20. You can just watch the histogram here. It does come right up to the end. It does clip a tad. If I really wanted to get crazy about it, I could actually come into, oh, look at here. Oh, that's auto, because auto levels. Let me reset the auto levels, and then we won't have that. See, now we don't have that problem. We do probably want to have a little bit of level in here come up, just because we want to get the brightness that we want. But I don't need to clip on the darks. The darks actually look pretty good. So, yeah, that looks pretty good. I might want to get a little more contrast. I might want to get a little bit of clarity so I don't push the contrast too far. Maybe a little structure for a little more detailed sharpening. But I think this looks really, really good. I'm quite happy with this. And again, this was by selecting the a metered exposure and then a +2 and a -2 from the metered exposure. And I think this turned out quite good. So well done. And let's go back, and now let's look at some extreme examples. A buddy of mine provided me these examples because they are indeed pretty extreme. So here's a 1/160th all the way to 1/2500th of a second, and then there's a 1/640th. So if 640 is our baseline, and then we say what that's 320, 160, that's -2 stops, and then 640, 12, 80, 2500, that's 2 stops. So we've kind of got we'll call this one the metered, and we'll call this the +2, and this the -2. Perhaps his camera takes the over, under, and then the metered at the end. But if we, blend these together and merge to HDR, and we'll just pop that up. I'm actually, you can see this is a pretty good example test, because this is bright light sunshine. This is like middle of the day, and there is auto adjust on here, and then I did my own addition of adjustments. You can see this is where I did it before and just did some adjustments. You can see the adjustments are different, but I mean this doesn't look too bad. It needs some fixing. Let me just apply the adjustments. Now I've got the same adjustments from the other version that I've applied to it, and I'm telling you, for a midday shot, this is pretty impressive. Let me go to the camera info and see. This was taken at 2:30 in the afternoon in June. This is in the northern hemisphere. This is straight up summer, right at the peak of brightness in the afternoon. And it's really phenomenal what this has actually pulled out. So I'm quite pleased with that result. Here's another example. In this example, this is a real estate example. So you've got a kitchen. It's got some nice French doors that go out to an outside. In the corner, you've got these little windows that has bright sunlight coming in. Of course, you've got mixed lighting, because you've got, indoor lights have a color temperature, outdoor has a different one. In the underexposed frame, you can see there's some detail outside. And of course, the others, it's almost entirely blown out. And so we're going to merge this together. Merge to HDR. Go. And let this run. And in the resulting image that I did previously, now here you can see this has been auto adjusted and so forth, and maybe the auto adjustments weren't great. You can see some detail outside, so that's nice. You can, but it's not the best. It still needs some work. So I went back and did my own adjustments on the image myself. Actually, I think this is even a bit blue. Blue. There we go. And then I don't know if it's maybe a little too red even also. So I'm going to copy the adjustments. I'm going to go to this image. I'm going to undo all the auto adjusts and apply the images that I had, the adjustments I had before. Looks like it's a bit underexposed, so we'll add 1 stop. Pretty close. Yep. So I think this is quite nice. If you were doing high-end real estate, you probably wouldn't be satisfied with this. A really high-end market really wants like all of this outside to be perfectly visible. You're going to use some other tool probably. You're probably not going to use Capture One. But for, certainly for me, I don't do commercial real estate as a business. For me, if I were just maybe on a tour somewhere and I wanted to take an exposure bracketed sequence just to have a memory, really very acceptable in my opinion. Then the next sequence is from a commercial laundromat actually. So this is 1/10, 1/80th, and 1/1.3 seconds. So you can see this is really a challenging, kind of low, super not well lit inside and very bright sunlight outside. And just quickly, I'll do these just so you see it, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But I just really wanted you to see, there are these are kind of some extreme examples. These are from Olympus cameras. These are, I think they're Olympus Micro Four Thirds. So here's the result that came out just now. So not too bad. This has auto adjustments on it. I think I did some adjustments earlier on a rendition of it. But I think this actually turned out pretty good straight out of the box with auto adjust. Again, maybe if you're doing high end, maybe you're not super happy, but I mean the details of what are outside isn't that important. It got all the details inside. And if you're trying to get a lease on a laundromat or something, probably would work fine. So that's the new pano stitching and high dynamic range for Capture One 22. My name is Walter Rowe. If you want to purchase Capture One and want to use the links in my description of this video, I would really appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Make sure you click on subscribe so you get notices when I do other videos or when I do a live stream. Thanks.